Hello and welcome to the Cubs on Deck podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by another broadcaster. Really the broadcaster of the Chicago Fire. I'm joined by Max Thoma.
There you go. I love that. I love the intro music too. That fires me up. So I appreciate you having me on, Greg.
I'm excited to spend the entire episode talking about Chicago Fire soccer and see how that goes. Right, that's why people are tuned in.
Messi's at Soldier Field, October 4th. I'm just
Tickets are going like crazy, dude.
Yeah, so the Fire had they had sold, I think, a little over 10,000 tickets for that game. I know we're not going to talk much soccer, but out of the gate, here we are, I guess. They had sold 10,000 tickets for that game, a little more. It's not till October 4th. That's a long way away. The day Messi signed, they sold over 12,000. So,
dude, that's crazy. Are you? So I mean, I guess since the last time I had you on, you're doing more things. Last time I talked to you, you were doing a lot of college. You were doing some college soccer. You were doing some college baseball, and now you're doing South Bend Cubs. I guess I don't know if I let off with that, but you're the South Bend Cubs broadcaster, and now you're the Chicago Fire broadcaster. I mean, you're doing some big things now.
Yeah, it's been a very tiring. I think you got me right after the tail end of probably the busiest week I've had this year in terms of hours in a car, hours in a plane, hours in South Bend and Four Winds Field. It's been a busy week, so nice to have a day off today. And this is one of those funky times in minor league baseball where we have no game today, no game tomorrow, then Wednesday through Monday because of the whole. You get a home game July 3rd or 4th. So great day to do the interview. I'm pumped to be here.
Yeah, so if you're tailing off and falling asleep mid podcast, that's why. Really this is a perfect time, right? Where you mentioned that we're at an interesting part of the minor league season. It's really like the halfway mark. The halfway mark of the minor league season just wrapped up. We got the draft happening in 2 weeks. We're gonna do some draft talk on the show next week to preview where the Cubs are selecting. There's a lot of prospect list updates, including ours over at Northside Bound. I dropped my top 40 today on Monday. So you guys listening on Tuesday can go back and check that out. I think you'll be able to read mine and Todd Johnson's over at Northside Bound as of the time this episode drops. But a lot of prospect updates, right? And so it now seems like the perfect time to get some updates on the guys in South Bend because there's a lot of fun things going on in South Bend that you've got a front row seat for. We're going to dig into about 6 or 7 players or so today. But I think that we can't delay talking about Cade Horton. I think we got to lead off with Cade Horton because what this dude is doing is absolutely insane every single time he takes the ball.
Yeah, I love going from Messi to going to Cade Horton. That probably wasn't the plan going in, but that's what we're rolling with. Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible. I got to sit down and talk with Cade. Brendan King, my partner, and I, we do game program stories for our monthly game program at home every month, obviously. And I just interviewed Cade Horton last week. So I got to sit down and chat with him for about 15 minutes. What we have seen on the mound, it's amazing because it's kind of like, as we're recording this, the final game of the College World Series is going on. And you remember Cade Horton last year in the postseason, it was like each outing was incredible, but somehow he topped himself. It felt like almost every other one, right? First game of the College World Series versus Notre Dame. He gets double-digit strikeouts for the first time in his career. Then he faces Ole Miss in the championship series. He gets even more than that, gets 13, has maybe the outing of his life in his collegiate career. And it feels like that's what we've been seeing the last 5 weeks, right? The home game during the day versus Dayton, he goes out, punches out 8, and it just looks so easy. The next week, he Ks 9. Then at home again versus Lansing, it's 10 strikeouts. And it just looks effortless. It looks like he's not sweating. The level of domination, this is my 3rd season with the South Bend Cubs in the Midwest League. I don't think I've seen a pitcher go about his business and just so easily smother the opposition in this league since Yuri Perez. We only saw him once. We saw him when he was a teenager with Beloit near the end of the 2021 season. And he went out there and it was just like, wow, I didn't feel like we stood a chance there in those 5 innings. That's what it must feel like when you're facing Cade Horton because it's just been incredible. He's been able to top himself just about every outing.
Yeah, and it feels like he can dominate with one pitch if he wanted to, and it could be a variety of different. Like he could go out there and just throw the fastball and be fine. He could go out there and just throw the slider and be fine. Just throw the curveball and be like he has 4 really good pitches, and he's just mixing and matching and just dominating these hitters, man.
Yeah, and how great was it the last outing? Him out of the gate with a free game of the day on MILB.TV. It's him versus Jackson Merrill, who's not only the top Padres prospect, but the top prospect on MLB Pipeline in the Midwest League. K's him, and he K's him with the changeup, not a fastball, not a slider, not the curve that's kind of more 12-6 than it has been. He said that's something he's really been working on. The curve, I think, has looked a lot better since the Dayton start, but he goes out and gets him with the changeup, and it was just that kind of set the tone, you felt like, for a great outing. And his background is just crazy. I mean, it's a well-noted story, but, two-sport athlete, two-way baseball player, starting third baseman last year. This is a guy who in 22 and 2/3 innings last year in the regular season had an ERA of almost 8. And within a few weeks later, like 5 weeks later, after he develops a slider, starts spotting it up better, he's a top 10 overall pick, and now he's, as advertised for a top 10 pick.
He was just announced as MLB Pipeline just came out with their updated top 100, and Cade Horton was the number 50 prospect in all of baseball. So, that's an elite level prospect at this point. It's not just a guy that's going out there and dominating the competition. Like, he's got the pedigree. He's showing he looks good. He looks the part. In addition to the numbers backing it up. Like, we know that last I checked, he had the highest swinging strike rate in all of professional baseball. Not the Midwest League, not just high, like all of professional baseball. He's leading everybody.
Yeah, it's incredible. And he's a tone setter because he struck out the side last outing. It was, one pitch away from the immaculate inning, which would have been such a cool way to start that outing. But his last 3 outings, he's punched out the side in the first in all 3. The last 11 outs he's recorded in the first inning have all been strikeouts. And he strikes out the side and he walks back to the dugout like, oh, I've done that a million times. Like, that's almost boring. Like, maybe if he did the immaculate inning, we might have seen something, but he's just stoic and lethal. It's just a stroll in the park.
The demeanor is pretty fun, honestly. You mentioned that he was a two-way player at Oklahoma. Is he ever out there taking BP ever? I know that like pitchers don't hit anymore, but is he ever out there? I would.
We have not seen. We haven't had a pitcher take BP this year, but I think sometimes minor league teams will do something to kind of keep the guys loose, especially if they're, honestly, if they're on a long winning streak or a long losing streak. You might see something to just kind of keep the guys loose. Maybe a day off taking BP, maybe a throw and go, whatever, what have you. There was a day where a lot of the pitchers took infield at short, and man, he looked smooth, and that arm was that was a good arm from short.
He could probably get the job done out there if need be. I mean, you see like Marcus Stroman out taking ground balls at short and third for the major league team. I'd love to see that with Cade.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was special. I don't want to film. I don't want to film it because I don't want to post that and have somebody be like, "Hey, what are we doing?"
Yeah,
but, I will certainly remember it.
That's terrific. All right, man. Let's go ahead and transition. We only have one more pitcher that I want to talk about today. Everybody else is a hitter. And so we're gonna. This is not the easiest transition I've ever done in my entire life. We're going from Cade Horton, the last year's first round draft pick, and as far as I'm concerned, the number 1 pitching prospect in the system. I had him ranked 2nd overall, to a guy who's just kind of doing his thing, Frankie Scalzo Jr. Man, I think he caught everybody's eye when he was in Myrtle Beach last year, and he had that mustache and he had the demeanor where just he was just that cool guy, right? Like he just had the cool guy demeanor. It's like I want to root for a guy like Frankie Scalzo Jr. But this year he's performing very, very well. The stuff looks a lot better than it did last year. What are you seeing from Frankie Scalzo?
Yeah, man, Myrtle had a great, fun bullpen last year. When you think about Reindl and his flowing hair and his just, chucking down the mid after the no-hitter. You think about Adam Lasky, who's also kind of a calm, cool demeanor guy who didn't allow an earned run when his time in Myrtle. I think it was 11 appearances last year before he got promoted. But Scalzo, we've seen a lot of great sliders here in the last few years. I think Zach Lee and Jake Reindl have 2 of the nastiest sliders I've seen come out of the bullpen in our league the last 2.5 years. But Frankie Scalzo's Jr., his slider is just filthy. It's one of those pitches where you're watching on TV, it almost looks like it glitches twice because it almost looks like it's just turning not in a curve, but almost just in a direct angle because it's just so sharp. That's what kind of stood out to me first. But also his roles kind of changed. He went from kind of a long middle reliever to a back end of the bullpen kind of guy. He struggled a little bit of late, but he's never really had that blow-up outing of any kind. He's just been so consistent. I think his ERA has been below 3 for a month and about 10 days or so. But that slider is great. And he he's just got one of the better personalities out there. He's kind of like a old school throwback. He looks like he's wearing like thrift store kind of outfits. We asked him about a hat he was wearing one day. Because I was like, man, I love that hat. He said he got it, I think, at like an estate sale when he was driving like Uber Eats in the Northeast a while back. And it was fun because instead of saying NBC Sports, it was a misprint hat. Like they messed up. So it's a Sports NBC. Just a cool, laid back guy, like you said.
The vibes are immaculate with Frankie Scalzo Jr.
Oh, yeah. And you got to have every bullpen is so diverse in terms of the personalities. And I think our bullpen is just as it should be. You got to have the mustaches. You got to have the long hairs. You got to have, for lack of a better word, you got to have a psycho or two out there.
Yeah. You have the weird lefty, right? Like every bullpen is supposed to have like that weird wonky lefty. I don't know if South Bend really has that, but there's typically a guy.
Yeah, there's always you got a flamethrower who can't find it always. There's always certain ones, right?
It's interesting that you mentioned like how he's kind of done a lot of different things from the bullpen. He's thrown multiple innings. He's thrown one inning. He's piggybacked. He's done a lot of different work. It reminds me a lot of what we've seen from like Joe Nahas the past few years. Like since Nahas has been in the system, that's been his role. And Scalzo kind of is doing a similar type of role as what Nahas has done.
Yeah, I would agree. I would throw kind of Tyler Santana in that mix, at least in his South Bend time as well. Maybe we haven't seen Tyler at the end of games like we've seen the other two. But, man, yeah, Joe Nahas is also having an incredible year. He just finally allowed a run for the first time in 7 appearances. I still think he hasn't walked a guy over that stretch. He'll do anything and everything. You want him to start a game, he'll go give you 5. You want him to get the final 3 outs, 6 outs. You want him to go eat. The no-hitter we threw, the last one we had in Fort Wayne in 2021, he threw 6 innings. He threw the 3rd through the 8th. When was the last time you heard of a guy throwing the 3rd through the 8th in a no-no? I mean,
it's weird, dude. It's awesome.
Strange. And I think he was actually perfect over those 6.
And it's like with Nahas too, like Nahas and Scalzo, both these guys, like that quality is something that keeps you in a system for a long, long time. You know, like even if your performance starts to go down a little bit, which is not the case with either of those two guys, but like you get kept around a little bit longer because like that's something that a front office and a coaching staff really loves to see. Are those guys just willing to kind of get down and do it all?
Yeah, and do it all well. You know, if you ask him to do anything, he'll go do it, and he's doing it at a great level. So I think Joe's one of those guys you could peg as one of the next potential suitors for a promotion up to Double-A. I think Joe's up there. I think Jared Wright's up there. Certainly a handful.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of there's a log jam all throughout the entire system, and Nahas is a guy that's absolutely ready for that. Let's transition to some hitters because we got several to talk about, but I want to lead off with your guy BJ Murray Jr. because it was just announced literally about an hour before we hopped on the show. It was announced that along with PCA, BJ Murray Jr. is one of the participants in the Futures game in Seattle this year, which is like really, really fun that BJ got that distinction. That's a big time honor for him to get that.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about BJ and that honor that he gets?
Yeah. First off, how about the contrast between the two guys the Cubs are sending? Because they're sending Pete, who was obviously there last year in his hometown in LA. Now a top 10 prospect in all minor league baseball. You talk about the new rankings they came out with today. You know Pete could go any year, right? He's that good. He's electric. He amps up everybody. He's just a ball of energy, right? Well, BJ Murray is a stark contrast, I think, in many a fashion. And the great Dave Keller, who's been, in the Cubs farm system for a long, long time, says, that guy just operates on island time. And I think that's the best way to describe BJ Murray from the Bahamas. He is just absolutely never fazed by any high, any low. The eye at the plate, I think, is the best I've seen. Him and Bryce Wyndham, I would say, are 1-2 in terms of guys I've announced consistently over the last few years. But we're seeing the power from BJ this year, which was last year was always like this guy, his OBP is always going to be, over 350, probably close to 400 at any given point in the season. He's going to walk more than he strikes out. Great from both sides. Defense is solid. If this guy can hit the ball in the air and hard, sky's the limit. And we're seeing that this year. So we're pumped for BJ because on a team that was, stock full of talent for 132 games plus the postseason last year, BJ was one of those guys kind of near the bottom of the order. When we were making a run, he wasn't getting the headlines, but just went about his business, operates on island time. The guy's always got a smile. If he looks at the umpire and is not thrilled with a strike call, I'm going with BJ Murray. I'm going ball. I'm going ball.
The combination of the demeanor and like the eye, yeah, you gotta roll with BJ on that for sure. It is funny, like you got Hollywood Pete and you got Island Time BJ going to the
Exactly.
Futures game together. It's two completely different dudes. I love that. I wrote up about BJ Murray in my new rankings over at Northside Bound that what I really like what I've seen from BJ this year is that we knew he had this incredible approach and we knew he could get on base and we knew he had all that. But like the jump from like the double A level to the triple A level and the jump from the triple A level to the major league level is huge, especially for a guy with his profile where he draws a lot of walks and he like makes a living off of that. You know what I mean? At some point you have to start hitting the ball for power and all that good stuff. And like that's what he's doing this year. And so like that's been massive for me. And that's why I view him in so much more of a better light now than I did this time a year ago, because it's just like you have to have that hit tool. You have to have that feel to hit. And he definitely has that more this year than he did a year ago.
Yeah, there must be something in the water that him and Owen Casey were drinking together, because it feels like both of them really tapped into what people wanted them to tap into. I mean, OC especially. I mean, that guy's just knocking the cover off the ball. It feels like every week. But him and BJ have, I think, really surpassed expectations in the jump from high A to double A this year.
Well, another guy that really has too is Pablo Aliendo, who,
oh, yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
like going like this offseason, we're like, all right, if Pablo can just add some muscle, like we just need to see some more muscle on him. He's like, he was hitting a whole lot of singles, like he had that feel to hit.
Is it?
Yeah, exactly. And so he had that feel to hit it. It's like, all right, like he's got to add some more muscle if he's going to hit for power. And then he shows up in spring training and it's like, all right, this dude definitely added some muscle, So like he's doing exactly what we wanted to see from him too. That jump from some of these guys, you're right, is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and they always say it might be the biggest jump, in the minors is from high A to double A. You're no longer getting a whole lot of mistakes. Guys are kind of executing the exact kind of pitches that they want. It's at a very high caliber. Pitchers that can't hit their spots don't last long in double A. So you got to know your weaknesses and know the strengths of the pitcher and be able to adjust on the fly. And those are a few guys that have done it really well. I've been pumped watching Pablo because, to see him. It's always fun seeing a catcher hit for power, I think, with Moises Ballesteros, for example. But especially Pablo, because he's just a guy who's just everybody's favorite, always a smile. Just a pleasure to be around.
I mentioned that Pablo Aliendo is like very much so following the Miguel Amaya path. Like where he's way young for a catcher at the double A level. He had that, like when he first showed up in the system, he was known for like managing a pitching staff. He had a good arm. Like he worked well defensively behind the plate. And it was like, all right, can the bat come around? Same as Miguel Amaya, And like I see a lot of parallels between those two guys and their development. Now, Miguel Amaya has just taken off. So like I think that's like the peak. Like that's what you're hoping that Pablo Aliendo becomes. But like it's not, you don't have to squint too hard to see that happening.
No, and two guys who, also terrific athletes for guys who are behind the plate. I mean, you don't see a lot of fantastic guys just in the way they move, going out there and consistently catching behind the plate. But I think those two are kind of prime examples.
All right, you mentioned another catcher, Moises Ballesteros, and I want to talk about him because he is new to you guys up in South Bend. He dominated Myrtle Beach. We were waiting for weeks and weeks. We had people in the comments, people in the replies on Twitter begging and pleading for Moises Ballesteros to get the call up from Myrtle Beach up to South Bend. Really the most deserved one of the most deserved promotions in the system. And now you get to watch him every day manning or behind the plate and just like putting in work in the batter's box.
We were thrilled. We were talking about this guy at the end of last year, right? I think Twitter was going crazy for his swing when he got, called up to a full season affiliate for the first time in Myrtle Beach. And this year he hasn't missed a beat. He slugged over 500 in Myrtle in April. He's slugging, between his time with the Pelicans and his time with South Bend, way over. It's 551 here in the month of June. And what is it, June 26th today? A guy who, we talk about BJ Murray. We talk about Bryce Windham. a guy you can kind of pencil in as having an on-base percentage is going to be about 100 points higher than the average. It's 130 points higher in his rookie season, 95 points higher last year. It's 122 points higher right now this season. Just an incredible high, which I think you have to also take into account the fact that he's 19. Not a lot of 19-year-olds out there that are sitting 42 walks to 34 strikeouts at this point in the year, especially young guys who want to make themselves and their presence known, who might not think that, the way to get the attention and draw the praise of a front office is to go out and draw walks, right? It's often they want to be aggressive. They want to swing, and that's kind of more of an acquired talent or skill. But man, the eye's incredible. 8 home runs when he joined us. Our team had 30 home runs going into last Tuesday. We got Felix Stevens, who's got 13. We got Moises Ballesteros, who's got 8. That immediately added, just a ton of power to our offense that had been, pretty solid at this point in the year still. Ballesteros, the power from the left side of the plate. And I know I'm ranting here, but kind of like Kevin Alcantara, he's got 10 plate appearances this year against pitchers that are younger than him. He's got 247 against pitchers older.
Yeah. We're gonna go off into a little bit of a tangent with Kevin Alcantara here. That's happening, but with Ballesteros, I think it's important to the 19 years old thing is wild to me. And both Stevens and Ballesteros are coming from that power in Myrtle Beach, where it's so hard to hit home runs in Myrtle Beach, and so the fact they were showing it there, imagine what they're gonna do at Four Winds Field.
Yeah, and I have heard for years now that, Pelicans Ballpark is where lefty batters go to die, right?
Yeah.
The right field is where it just completely dies. We looked at Mervis, and we saw what he was doing at South Bend. We asked our hitting coach, Dan Puente, where was this last year? He goes, you guys have no idea how hard it is for lefties in Myrtle Beach. And then we saw same thing with Owen Casey when we're looking at Owen Casey's numbers. And then we look at Ballesteros, and it's what's happening here? I remember seeing a swing from Parker Chavers last year when we were watching on the bus on Marquee, and he just demolished a ball to right center, and it maybe got to the warning track. And I'm like, oh my God.
Dude, so last year, it doesn't happen quite as often this year, but last year there was the cameraman in Myrtle Beach was the greatest I've ever seen. Yeah. And it was Chavers or Ballesteros or somebody would hit the ball in the air, and it looked like it was, and it was crushed. It was, and the camera would follow the ball hard. So all you could see is the ball in the night sky. Yeah, and it would land at the warning track. It's oh my God. So then you'd be what was the cameraman thinking? It's the cameraman was thinking that it was a bomb, and it was. It just didn't get out of the ballpark.
Yeah. So 8 home runs in, a little under half a season at that ballpark is tremendous. So yeah, it's going to be fun to watch him the back half of this season. 19-year-old, we don't get a whole lot of 19-year-olds in general. I think back to, when we first got Pablo in August of 2021, we got him and Pinango at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see how he, comes out after one series under his belt.
Yeah, I think that I'm excited to see him continue to work the way that he has. Not change up his approach, keep peppering that left center field gap, because that's what he does best. Showing off that power to left center, that's his go-to. And I don't yet want him to switch that up yet. I think that this offseason, I'm really excited to see him learn how to tap into pull side power a little bit more. That's going to be really exciting, because that's not even happening yet. He's not even, the pull side power is not even there. So I'm really excited to see him work. And I think that I have him as a top 10 prospect in the system right now. I have him number 10. And I think that that's a big come up from where he was to begin this season for sure.
I got 2 thoughts here. And one is, I thought it was telling, and it was kind of funny and just interesting that, we do a pregame interview on the field every game, for the folks in-house. It doesn't go anywhere. We've recently started posting them on YouTube and on our socials, but I interviewed Joe Nahas, and the last question I asked him was, hey, we just got a 19-year-old catcher, one of the top prospects in the system. How excited are you to work with Moises Ballesteros behind the plate? He goes, oh, I'm excited to see the bat. And usually in that kind of setting, you'll get, an answer a la kind of where you steer somebody. And Joe just went the other way. That's how exciting Ballesteros is to watch, which I thought was thrilling and telling. And then 2, just because you just came out with your, prospect rankings, your new one, I'll flip the interview around here for a second because I'm curious. who are fans the most interested in terms of you ranking a guy high or ranking a guy too low?
All right. So actually, I'll get to that in a second. So over at Northside Bound this past week, we did a fan created prospect list, and so the whole point is this Friday we're gonna release
Yeah.
that list as if fans created this themselves. They got the chance to vote, all that good stuff. We ended up getting, I think, over 60,000 votes on that,
Oh,
which is wild. Cubs prospect fans are insane. You guys are the absolute best. But so I'm curious to see what those results are, because those are super telling as like what fans want to see in terms of prospect list. I came out with a list this morning and I got plenty of comments about Hayden McGeary. I had Hayden McGeary ranked 30th in the system. And I knew, like, as I wrote that, I knew that was going to be the one comment I got back was, why is Hayden McGeary so low when he's absolutely tearing it up? Like, he tore it up with you guys in South Bend for the entire time he was there. He got called up to Tennessee and struggled for the first, like, I think 2 weeks or so, and then took everything he did there, like what was struggling with, learned from it, and now he's dominating again at the plate. I think my go. So I got to be careful on how I describe this. So I still have Matt Mervis ranked as the 11th best prospect in the Cubs farm system, and so much I've said for so long. So much of that is that the value in him as a Major League Baseball player has to come by getting a lot of hits, right? That the WRC plus of 120 or more, because even if he was a Gold Glove defender at first base, which I don't think he is, but like even if he was, first base defense doesn't bring you value. That doesn't up the WAR number. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so like that's just so much risk there. Like for a hitter who's so impressive, you would think that like there wouldn't be a whole lot of risk in Matt Mervis or Hayden McGeary. But I view the risk as being like if they don't hit for a month, right? If they go on a long cold stretch, then like their value is like really, really rough. And so like I'm kind of hedging my bets there a little bit. In my eyes, Hayden McGeary, like the best possible outcome is what we're seeing from Matt Mervis, right? Like Matt Mervis is one of the more talented bats in the system. And so like if Hayden McGeary can be that come next year, then I still only view him as like the 11th or so ranked best prospect in the system. So I understand like people getting upset about McGeary as 30, but like it's just because that value is only at first base, you know.
Oh yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, I love what I've seen from McGarry. You also got to think sample size because we've seen a half a pro season basically from him so far, right? 4-year D2 guy, BJ Murray style, 15th round pick, right? But yeah, man, it's also crazy just D2 for 4 years and then just the way that he came out
Dominated too.
smoking this year. I'm thinking like, who's out there recruiting? What scouts are out there at D2 games, and how are people not picking up on this guy? And a lot of times, I think at that point you kind of look at age, and what have you, and having not seen maybe top level, like JUCO or T1 pitching, but wild the success that he's had so far.
If I remember right, I don't, you might know this. I don't know. I don't know. He still had his COVID year after his 4 years at Colorado Mesa, and I think he was being recruited by like an SEC school when he was drafted. But I could be wrong on that. I don't know if you know.
I do not recall.
Okay, yeah, I might have just imagined that too, but
I could
moral of the story is that an
certainly see
SEC
that being
school
the case.
exactly. They should have been recruiting him for his
Yeah.
COVID year, that's for sure. All right, since we're on the topic of prospect list here, let's go ahead and dive into Kevin Alcantara because we've seen him the first 2 months of the year. He really struggled, right? He struggled at the plate. He was swinging the bat a whole lot at just about everything and making some contact, just not making the best contact all the time. He's been a whole lot hotter this past month. Basically, the month of June, he's looked a whole lot better. But we've seen, I think, 3 different examples of a top 100 list where he was in the top 100 list to begin the season, like preseason, but he was dropped out of it in their midseason updates, which I still have Kevin Alcantara as I believe third ranked prospect in the Cubs farm system. It feels like an extreme overreaction to believe in him the way you do preseason and say, no, like now he's not top 100 based off of 2 months worth of data, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what if he has a good next 2 months? Does that mean he propels himself all the way back to like, top 75? Because that just
Yeah.
seems like kind of a ridiculous, um, way to go about making your rankings. But like you said, I mean, for 2 months there, it just felt like sliders low, fastballs high. And that was the recipe for success if you were pitching to Kevin. You were getting the chases low. He couldn't get to the pitches high. Um, and that kind of felt like, and he talked about, in high A, they know what my weaknesses are. They know, and I have to prove myself that I can hit these pitches, or I can take these pitches, so that I'm not making these outs and not striking out, especially pitchers that aren't in the zone. But I mean, 854 OPS this month. He's hitting 313. Didn't homer in May. He's got 3 home runs. He's got, I think it's 11 RBIs this month, 14 RBIs this month. He's also drawn 7 walks here this month, which I think
big.
is key because he only walked once last month. And I think he had a 22-game stretch where he only walked once early in the year. So he's looking at more pitches. When he's making contact, it's louder contact. We've seen flashes throughout the year, but that game versus Cedar Rapids a week and a half ago where, 5 for 5, 6 RBIs, 2 home runs. The home runs, screaming liner to left, towering drive to left, and the 3 singles, line shot through the 6-hole left side, line shot to right center, ground ball beating the shift out to the other way to right field were just 5 swings you piece together and you go, this guy seems like he can do it all. So 20-year-old, I mean, he's 6'6" too. He knows he's going to have a little bit of a long swing, right? He's getting used to the body. He's getting, he's putting on more muscle. At the same time, he's trying to make adjustments to guys who are much older than him. He's had 18 plate appearances against pitchers younger, 236 against guys older. Like, he's figuring it out, and he shouldn't have been expected to come out and firing on all cylinders when it's 41 degrees in the Midwest.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's another thing, right? Like, he's playing in cold weather. Like, he played in cold weather for the first time during his first 2 months.
Offense across the league in April was pretty brutal in the Midwest League. Like, I was looking at, where we were ranking in some categories, and you're like, wow, we're struggling. It's like, well, we're actually in 3rd in slugging right now. And you're like, well, man, it's been a tough go of it, I guess, for the league.
The first month of the year was like everybody was facing Cade Horton every single night.
In snow. Like
exactly, yeah. Without Contra, man, like my issue with dropping him from top 100 list is not like pointing to his struggles in the early going and saying like, oh, like those aren't legit, right? Like, I don't think they're legit. I think that like what we're seeing in June is, but like, if you're scared off, if you're a prospect evaluator, and if you're scared off by those 2 months, then what were you so excited about to begin with preseason? You're excited about him being 20 years old in high A. You're excited about him being a freak athlete, playing really solid defense in center field, being fast as hell, just like having great exit view. Like, you're excited about all the explosiveness of Kevin Alcantara, not necessarily like you're not latching on to the fact that he's like walking not enough. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like a weird circumstance. Like, he still is all of those things. He's still all those freak talent things. So to go from ranked 67 or whatever to ranked outside of the top 100 is just so strange to me.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what we see from Kevin in July, to see if we can, repeat, maybe even improve upon what we've seen the last, almost 4 weeks here in June versus what we saw the last couple of months. Because Owen Casey came here, he was really, really having a struggle in April. He turned it around in a Kevin fashion. He just did it about a month earlier. But you got to give these guys time. I mean, what were you and I doing at 20? I certainly wasn't learning to hit a Midwest League 98-mile-an-hour fastball in the cold. So, yeah, he plays with a lot of confidence. He's a great guy on and off the field. Been a thrill to have. A great guy to go watch take BP.
Dude,
he's so smooth and cool out there. He made a sliding catch on like the first out of the game last week against Fort Wayne. Speaking of Fort Wayne, we talk about overreactions kind of in prospect rankings. Robert Hassel III is a guy I saw that I think dropped significantly more than anybody else in the rankings that came out today. And that guy last year, the entire year, we were like, oh my God, this guy barrels absolutely everything. He's having a rough start to his year the first couple months. And, I think it's sometimes a little bit sexy to drop guys a ton who aren't playing well and move a bunch of new guys in who are having breakout years, and
Yeah.
more so than a guy who's struggling and you just drop him down a handful of spots.
So so we won't we'll get mad at dropping Kevin Alcantara, but we won't comment on the fact that PCA and Cade Horton jumped up an incredible amount. We won't comment on that part.
Yeah, it's cool.
I
It's cool to see not only both of them move up, but to hit kind of that. There's significant numbers there, right? Which like it's stupid that if you were 50 versus 51, it's like, oh, he's top 50. It's like, oh, well, he's 51. Like Cade's top 50, so it sounds cool. You know, Pete's top 10. That sounds sweet, obviously as well. So nice
yeah, they did it right for Cubs fans, that's for sure. I was over in when South Bend came over to the Quad Cities earlier this year. It was my first look at Kevin Alcantara in person, and like you read that he's 6'6", like you read that he's like this freak athlete, but then you go and like you're standing next to him, like you're standing like 10 feet away from him on the field, and it's like this dude is huge. Like he was standing next to Hayden McGeary too, and like Hayden McGeary is a massive human being too. But it's like those two guys, like McGeary and Kevin Alcantara, standing there, and then like everybody else. Like it's like he's like two people like on stilts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was great. They would take BP sometimes back to back, and you're just like, you know, the guys setting up the bar here pregame and left field. They need to be paying more attention right now because like they are in the firing zone. They're like, you know, the classic like get off the bus guys. Like where if you didn't know the team that got off the bus, you'd be like, we got to keep an eye out for that guy. Felix Stevens is the same way. That's a big man. We had our first like legit real Gatorade cooler dump last week after Stevens homered on Thursday. And I've gotten very accustomed to these. You see them coming a mile away. Last year we'd have 3, and you knew exactly who was coming from which direction. You know, Aliendo's coming from the bullpen. Palencia's coming from the dugout. Felix Stevens is so big, I did not see Luis Verdugo behind him, and I got drenched, and it was cold. It was the end of the night. And like Lance Reimel in the dugout or in the clubhouse after the game, when I gave him the box score, he's like, hey, who got you? I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't see around Stevens.
Yes, Stevens did because he blocked. Yeah. What was the percentage of Gatorade cooler on you versus Gatorade cooler on Felix Stevens?
I think Tyler Santana probably got like 10 to 15%. I think Stevens probably got like a little over 50, and I got, you know, whatever's left.
The rest.
But last year, sometimes they would just target us with one of the coolers because you know they just started having a lot of fun with that.
Who's the culprit? Like who's the always pouring the Gatorade? Like you said Verdugo was doing it this time. Is he the culprit?
Well, we're starting to figure it out because we haven't been doing it this year. So and we struggled at home, frankly, this year too. So hopefully it's Verdugo going forward. It was Palencia all of last year, and then Aliendo was joining, and sometimes we'd have that third one, might be a wild card kind of guy with a third. There was a fun one where, you know, when you get a walk off, obviously all the coolers go out and are dumped. And I think it was Pablo or Palencia, I can't remember, just dumped the bucket of gum on top of somebody's head. And it was tough because we had to go like pick up all the pieces. We had the Gatorade nobody does anything with, but the gum was kind of annoying actually to go grab.
That's rough. Dude, how awesome is it to see what Palencia is doing up in triple, like still touching triple digits, out of the bullpen now, just got that bulldog mentality. Like he looks like a closer, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, everybody's always talked about it, even just wanting to see a glimpse. We were hoping in the playoffs last year, we're like, hey, championship series comes down to the 9th inning and it's close. Can we get Danny P for one inning out of the pen? And I asked, you know, Tony Kagul, our pitching coach the last couple of years, you know, what would we be expecting with the velo if he knew he had 20 pitches? And he was like scared to think about it. But
he's like, the limit does not exist.
Yeah, exactly. Mean Girl style. But it's funny because you watch him throw a fastball, you look at his size, you know, he's 5'11". And I think people have always kind of thought like, oh, he's going to be a closer, not a guy who's going to be able to, you know, maintain an entire season going out there trying to throw 5 or 6 innings. But I thought the arsenal has always kind of been there. The changeup is, I think, kind of nasty. The slider is, I mean, I'm imagining it's still sitting about 92 to like 94. Yeah. I thought he was filthy. It's great to see him kind of on that fast track where, I mean, we knew last year when we had him as a starter, hey, if the Cubs needed to take a guy from high A and throw him in the 7th inning, this guy could actually go do it. Because he's just always had that stuff. So I'm pumped to see him, and I'm going to be thrilled to watch that debut when it does come.
Yeah, it's like the best of both worlds, right? Where I think that with Palencia, you get to love the fact that he's being fast-tracked up to the majors in a relief role. but you can still kind of hold out hope that there's that transition back into the rotation
Oh,
down the road,
absolutely.
and like I'm choosing to think of it that way. And I think that like it's, I've been doing that with a lot of these guys that have been converted to the bullpen this year, because we've seen Palencia converted, we've seen Ryan Jensen converted, we've seen
Luke Little, another one that we started.
Luke Little, yeah, exactly, and Porter Hodge, we've seen it. We saw him work out of the bullpen in his last outing through 2 innings, no hits, no runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Looked really good out of the bullpen. I don't know if that's a thing that'll stick, but like I think that at this point, you're just in today's baseball, it's like, all right, like let's get your best guys up in Chicago throwing innings, and then we can sort out who is the starter, who is the reliever later down the road. You know what I mean? And I think that with Justin Steele doing that so successfully, like I think the front office just has more ammunition to say, look, this works.
Yeah, I think we've seen it time and time and again. I think Steele's a great example, but young guys who get their feet wet towards the end of a season, especially coming out of the bullpen, so they have some major league innings and experience under their belt. They come back the next year, are back to their accustomed starter self, and we see if that can play out then moving forward at the big league level.
All right, let's go from Kevin Alcantara to another Kevin Made, who has been on quite the hot streak recently. Actually, when I was kind of jotting down the notes here on who I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about Kevin Made, about how he's not been performing all that well, and then the last probably week, really just week or so, he's been really really strong. I I'll lead off by saying that I'm the way I view Kevin Made is really interesting, right? So I think that like my opinions of him right now are just about the exact same as my opinions of him as a prospect coming into the season. Like, I don't think I've really changed all that much. And I think that like part of that is we're very clearly, I think this is the case with all prospects, but with him especially, not even close to a finished product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree on that front. It's been great to watch him. He had a few great games there versus Cedar Rapids, and then obviously some great games, especially here on Friday and Saturday for South Bend. But yeah, he's so smooth out there defensively. We have a trio of infielders you can kind of maneuver wherever you want. But Kevin, he's got the arm strength at third if you want him at third. He's certainly got the glove at short if him and Ed are kind of working out interchangeably right there. But I think we're going to see a stretch continued for Made. And I think kind of him aligned with other Kevin, 6'6" freak Kevin. We've seen flashes, but we haven't seen really the ability to piece together a series and then another series where it's like, okay, there was, about 12 games there where they really kind of looked great throughout a couple of weeks. We're kind of starting to see that, I think, from both of them, certainly the last few weeks from Alcantara. But I think Made is going to be very I think we're going to see a very good July, the way he's grooving right now. He's got a lot of experience in the Midwest League now. Still a very young guy, still just a 20-year-old. And we got a lot of, young 19 and 20-year-olds, and you can't expect them to learn it all at once. And Kevin wasn't terrific with us at the plate last year. The defense always was, but he came through clutch sometimes in the postseason when called upon and needed. And this year you feel like it's fun to watch him hit the ball out because you kind of see the potential when he hit it out. A few days ago over the weekend, you get a glimpse of just what might be in store down the line.
The swing's pretty smooth at this point in his career. It wasn't always the case, and it wasn't like a big change where he went from a really wonky looking swing to a really smooth looking swing. It's just kind of gradually just gotten a little bit better, a little bit better. And he's another guy who's a really good athlete. Like he shows it when he's in the field very clearly. He's got the strong arm, the jumps at shortstop and third base on defense I think are really, really strong too. And so like, it's just a matter of like, can the batted ball profile like improve to match like how strong he is on defense? Not even how strong, because like that'd be a great hitter, but like just enough, you know what I mean? Just enough to like get the job done to continue his development up the ladder.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Mate has in store in terms of some adjustments going forward, because I think the swing is pretty, and I think he profiles well, at that spot moving forward.
All right, let's go to another one of those guys. I think it's the last guy we have on our list here. Another guy that is in that mix of just kind of being shuffled around the infield a little bit. He's new-ish still. I guess we can still say new, right? He's back in South Bend. Ed Howard is healthy, and he's in South Bend doing his thing. It's so exciting to see him actually on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think the place we got to start with Ed is just, tip your cap to the journey that he's been on. Um, I think it was a month and 27 days between his injury last year in May up the first baseline. And then he gets, his debut, goes out there, not only gets 3 hits, but got a hit in his first at bat back. And he actually had an infield single in that game up the middle. Throw pulls the first baseman off, and you're like, oh no, like it felt like deja vu watching it.
It was the first game back. It was that first game back, and I was like,
exactly, yeah, that
what is
game
going on?
And we were all talking about it. It was like, oh no, like that looked exactly like the play last year. But just terrific to see Ed back. And when he hit the home run versus Cedar Rapids, that game where he had, single, double, home run, he was a triple shot of the cycle. There was 1 out in the 4th inning. But to see him, trot around the bases and circle him for the first time, since late April last year, I think was something special. He's just such a great dude. You talk to Ed and you're like, I would see and not have to stretch my imagination at all to wonder why anybody would ever pick this guy in the first round. Personality alone, he just speaks and goes about his business like the face of a franchise kind of guy. And he's strictly business, it feels like, in his return back, and only getting better and better. I know he struggled the last week or so, but I think if we kind of compare him and Luis Devers can't be expected to be playing like everybody else are right now. They're going to have their days where they look like someone who hasn't seen many pitches or thrown many pitches in game situations because they haven't this year. So Ed struggled a little bit the last, 4 games, I believe. But yeah, remember, he was just fine in it. He was hitting 333 over the last 9 games last year before the injury. So give Ed some time. Boy, he had a double play turn when he was at second versus Cedar Rapids too, where you saw the footwork and the athleticism, and you're like, I think it was him and Mate up the middle turning one, and you're like, man, that was pretty, that was special.
Dude, that's what I was most excited to see was how, if he was still still silky smooth in the field, because like that hip injury, like that's no joke. So like, and so much of what makes him impressive is how smooth he is on defense. And so like that was more than anything we're seeing at the plate. Like I had my eye on him on defense, which really, like, from my perspective, like I'm probably paying the least amount of attention as a guy who follows prospects, the least amount of attention to defense, because it's so hard to track. It's so hard to follow,
especially
when you're following
defense. I mean, it's
exactly, yeah. There's no metrics that show minor league defense, so
we're not getting the ultimate zone rating on these guys.
I'll work on pulling up that metric. I'll work on making that.
Please make that happen.
Yeah, so that is not typically something I keep an eye out for, but with Ed Howard, like, that's 100% what I've been watching. I think that we've gone this far about talking about Ed without mentioning the fact that, like, the dude is absolutely yoked. Like, he made good on his develop on his rehab, and he was probably just like benching like cars during his rehab, because he looks like a completely different guy, really.
Yeah, it's always cool, especially watching the younger guys, because you just feel like they have more room for, projectability and growth. Even seeing Pete come back, when we saw Pete at CubsCon, it was like, oh my God, Pete is huge.
Yeah.
Ed's the same way. I think it's probably even more impressive given the injury and given how much time he was probably not spending on his feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got a sense for just how big the name and the face Ed Howard is. We were walking around Cubs convention with Ed. BK and I were like his security guards. We were taking him from doing autographs up to where we needed to interview him. And there were just people, I don't want to say hounding, because it was all positive. Cubs fans are the best. And they were really just saying, like, hey, we hope you come back 100%. Hey, great to see you walking around. Hey, we can't wait to see you play soon. But there were people just absolutely all over the place. And Ed was like, hey, man, can I just go to the bathroom? I'm like, yeah, I'll walk you over there. We're getting like, fans all over the place. Just trying to get Ed to the bathroom. It took me like 10 minutes to get him over there.
What did you do this offseason? I watched Ed to the bathroom.
First round pick. It's just like, I'm like, Ed's a legend, and he only played for like a month last year. That's just how big, the presence of Ed Howard is.
Yeah, dude, that's so exciting. I'm picturing you and BK just as bodyguards the entire time over there.
The funniest part was this woman was like, hey, Ed, do you mind getting a picture with my son? He's right over here. He's sleeping. And it sounded really weird. But in reality, it was hilarious. I guess her son was kind of taking a nap because it was a long day at the Cubs convention, and he was just passed out on the side over there. And Ed
so they wake him up?
No. Ed just went over, did this, took a picture with him. She's like, oh my God, he's a huge fan. This is going to be so funny later. And then Ed and I just left. I think I took a picture on my phone too, because it was just we were dying. At first we were both like, whoa. And then it was like, okay, we actually very much see the humor in this. Like that kid's gonna have a heck of a story,
That's incredible.
He was asleep. But Ed's a legend, and I think we can all appreciate the journey that he's been on. Certainly a guy who is appreciating just being out there and playing with his friends and his brothers and trying to improve and climb the ladder like he was last year.
So Ed hit the gym during his rehab. How was your off season exploits?
You know what's annoying is when we say that prospects put on a bunch of weight in the offseason, the assumption is that it was good weight. And the assumption is that, oh man, yeah, Ed put on a bunch of weight. Yeah, he did. He's jacked now. Pete put on a bunch of weight. Oh yeah, no, he's super strong now. Like probably, benches a truck. And if someone's like, hey, Max Thoma put on some weight in the offseason, you'd be like, ooh. rough go in the winter months, I guess. I mean, that would be the case. Speaking
of which, I mean, you guys had a pretty big competition with the hot dog eating contest, huh?
Yeah, I was pretty pumped. Honestly, I'm not a big hot dog guy. I was putting the number at about 3 to 4. And the first one did not go down well. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. And then you're at like 4 and you're like, okay, we got something cooking here. But yeah, I was looking at
I forget how many did you end up? Do you do all
7.25.
All right.
Number 8 was staring at me in the face for like 35 minutes. I mean, it was just not.
You wiped the floor with BK though.
Yeah. And we're also talking strategy. I'm like, are we putting condiments on these things? Because like, I don't want 9 hot dogs worth of condiments on these things, but I don't want 9 dry hot dogs either. And I'm not dunking like I'm Kobayashi. So
what was your strategy? Like, did you go 1 an inning, or what was the method?
The goal was 1 an inning. These pitch clock innings, sometimes you never know. And it's like, oh, hey, there was 7 pitches in 1 minute and 45 seconds, and you didn't bite your hot dog. It's like, cool. We got a 90-second break. So when I was doing play-by-play, I just kind of would ask a question and then just start eating. And thankfully, even Lance Brozdowski was terrific. He saw me chewing, just kept talking. He was like, and that one's fouled away. It's like, my man. So yeah, we're not great.
That's incredible. Yeah, I
haven't even looked at a hot dog since, by the way.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, those are pretty good size. So when I lived over in Columbus, they have the Clippers over there have Diamond Dog Night. I think it's on like Tuesday or Wednesday nights, and it's literally a hot dog for 10 cents. And you go and you take a $1 bill up there, and you get 10 hot dogs, and you just plow through those things, dude. But now, granted, those are like some small those are like the hot, they're not like the Nathans. They're like I forget what they are, but like really small hot dogs. So you can plow through those a little bit easier. But like me and some buddies would go over there and we just like have a competition just because we wanted to and see how many we get down. We put in some work on Diamond Dog Night over there.
I want to say Alex Coleman said that he tried this once. I'm trying to think if he tried it.
He did. Yeah. He did Diamond Dog when he was over in Columbus. Yeah.
I thought he was talking about the deal, and I'm like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I wish we had somehow come up with a way that we could have just like had a heater available, and had they stayed warm the whole time, things might have been a little different, a little better.
Also, so you had them all. You had all 9 dogs in the booth with you ready to roll. It wasn't like you
I think so we could have the photo. I mean, we live in a social media society, so I think they wanted the photo of all of us with 9. So,
oh my God, that's rough.
Could have just gotten 3, went back, gotten 3, went back, gotten 3. I think
that would have been the smart move. Yeah, that would have been the smart move. But oh well.
Yeah, I want it next time, but I really don't want there to be a next time. So, next time we're doing 9 heads of lettuce.
The video you put together was tremendous with you getting caught mid bite. That was terrific. Marquis did you dirty.
That was hilarious. Our director that day actually apologized to me after the game. And I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, that's exactly what people needed to see at that moment. Like, I'm like, that was perfect. You could not have timed that any better. That was hilarious. So I'm like, dude, don't sweat it at all. It's tough to be the guy closest to that camera we have in the corner because it just makes
you were screwed from the beginning. You didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, it makes me look, disproportionately way bigger than everybody anyways. So, me with a hot dog in my mouth just did not look. And it's funny because we have a monitor right between us. And that's where I was kind of looking as they were talking. So I caught out of the corner of my eye me eating the hot dog, and it was just like, the realization was just there. And I was like, uh-oh.
That's brutal. This is not good. Oh, my God. All right, man. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap things up here? I know we ended with some hot dog talk. That seemed natural.
Oh yeah, always is. No, I mean I'm excited to see your guys' rankings the rest of the week. I'm excited to see what the fans' ranking looks like, honestly. Because I am curious because they always have opinions, and I want to see how they all kind of stack up with each other here. And I think they kind of react more so maybe what we saw like from the pros making these rankings, where they'll react to someone having a bad couple of months more than maybe I think they should. But we'll see. Cubs fans are the best, man. I've learned that certainly in my time in this farm system is there's for the thing that Twitter is. I can't think of the right word to describe it. Just how brutal the place that can be.
Chaos.
Yeah, just chaos and negativity. Cubs Twitter is a special place. It just seems like everybody's always having fun, either making fun of themselves or picking out the positives of being optimistic in a game. They could have had the game the Rockies had a couple days ago and come out of there and said, "Hey, how about the effort there scoring that late run?"
It is incredible. It's an incredible place, incredible community. All right, man. People can follow you on Twitter at Max Thoma. Is that the handle?
Yes. Keep it nice and easy.
There you go. Follow Max on Twitter at Max Thoma. Check out the South Bend broadcast. You guys got any coming up on Marquee coming up here soon?
Not our next homestand, but I believe the homestand after. But we got a big game coming up July 4th at home. If you happen to be near the area, July 4th, always a big game at Four Winds Field. We had Drew Smiley on the bump last year. I cannot promise an MLB rehab this year, but we'll see how that goes. This is always a very special time of the year when we pass the halfway point. You see what teams are made of. You get a bunch of new guys coming up to see what they're made of, and fans are always terrific around this time of year, July 4th.
Yes, I know we have listeners up there in the South Bend area. Go check out the South Bend Cubs. Going to Four Winds Field is terrific, so you got to go check it out. You can find me on Twitter at Out of the Vines. You can find this podcast anywhere where you listen to podcasts, at Northside Bound on YouTube. You can go check out, like I said, this is Prospect List week over at Northside Bound. So whenever you're listening to this, you can still go check out the website. There's going to be a list. It's me, Todd, Zumac, all dropping our top 40 list. We're going to drop a cumulative list that can be Northside Bound list. And then that fan created list will drop on Friday. So go check that out. And then in the meantime, we'll have plenty of draft content coming soon. Mock drafts from Greg Zumac and Todd Johnson. They're the draft experts that are coming up in just the 2 short weeks, really, is when the draft is. So we'll have plenty of content there. And in the meantime, we'll be back in 1 short week, and we'll be bringing you guys some draft prep content over on the podcast feed. So thank you guys so much, and we'll talk soon.